This is a photo of my last crew. I've taken several backpacking groups up into the Bighorns and Jim Bridger Wilderness and Glacier, and I gotta say it's the best place to do youth ministry in the world, because youth ministry done down at these altitudes is so difficult. The kids are still locked into their social group. They're still dealing with the same family system that they had. But you know what? You take them 1,000 miles away and you do things that they've never done before and show them that which they've never seen before, and all the veneers, the many, many layers of I'm too cool for this, or I'm not sure what to do with that, so I'll act this way, or whatever, all that peels away. And you kind of get down to the essential human being. And it's just a joy to do that sort of thing. However, it is such hard work that you can do it wrong and get hurt. Get hurt even badly. And you can also get hurt in a way that doesn't happen down here. What happens down here, excuse me, if somebody has a heart attack, somebody breaks a leg, they go to the hospital. And life goes on for the rest of the community. And people in the community take a little time here and a little time there, and we go visit them in the hospital. Or they go home. But the organization rolls on. Nobody, even in those businesses where the boss is the first and last word on everything, even when the boss finally goes down, the business still opens on Monday morning, closes about the same time in that evening, and it goes on. But in a backpacking group, when one goes down, everything stops. You can't leave the one for the wolves. It's a bad thing. You learn community in a new way when you're on a youth group backpacking trip. And so, because in those several trips I learned various things the hard way, I came up with some rules for how to have a good trip. Not just for one, but for all. Because by definition, if everybody doesn't have a good trip, nobody has a good trip. We are woven together that tightly. That's me on the right. You know, I'm going to fold these lights down. Sorry for the interruption. A little better. That's my daughter. And one thing that we all get as a member of any church backpacking trip I've ever led is, you see, we're both leaning on walking sticks, because it's handy to have something else to catch your balance when you have unbalanced yourself by putting 40 or 60 pounds on your back. But we have rules for how to have a good trip, and everyone was expected to live by those rules. Rule number one was stop before you get hurt. Stop before, and the most common way to get hurt, especially that first day, is with a blister. You can preach all you want about socks and good fitting boots. Nobody breaks in boots on the trail. No new tennis shoes on the trail. But if you stop and stick a little mold skin. I don't know if you've ever seen that stuff, real sticky little fuzz that you can patch on. You won't have further trouble if you say to the whole group, stop. And you have to say it, because we walk for 45 to 50 minutes, and we break for 10 or 15, depending on how hard it is. And I won't stop unless somebody says stop. But if somebody says stop, and I don't care if we're 5 minutes from the last break, we will then stop. We will patch up. We will then be able to move on. Because the thing that threatened injury was dealt with really early on in the game. What's the next rule? Always have a friend with you. And a friend to help get your pack on and off. I don't know if you've ever done this, but you know, if you pick up a 60-pound pack, a womb, human bodies sort of made to pick things up. That works pretty well. Now, decide you're going to slip your arm through one of these holes, and then you're going to throw the pack around, and you're going to have that huge weight doing what? Trying to spin this off your spine like a top. So, if everybody, anybody who ever gets caught trying to throw their pack on like that would meet with group censure. We would come up with something for them to do, like sing a song, or some way to help them remember never to put their pack on that way. Always the other person picks up the pack, holds it in the air, you back into it, put your arms in, pull it on. And you don't do that spin thing. That also keeps the whole group moving along. What's another rule? Everybody eats the food. It's the only source of warmth that we've got on that trip. Kids say, oh, I ate instant oatmeal. You know, why don't we have something else? Because something else weighs more than 1 1/4 ounces, that's why. Everybody has to eat the food. All of us, I mean, my whole ministry, I didn't do one of these down in Vegas, but my whole ministry with these kids was done in northern climates. These are people who know how to live in 30 and 40 below zero. They know how to stay alive all the way to school and back and stuff like that. However, they just don't know how to estimate the difference between going from their warm house in their very good clothes to their warm school and going outside and not going inside again for a week. It never gets warm, and if it rains, it stays wet and cold for as long as it rains. So you have to eat your food. It's the only source of calories. It's your only defense against that chronic mountain-high chill. Next rule. Everybody carries group equipment as well as our own personal stuff. And these are direct quotes, by the way. I hand these out as handouts to the kids on the first day of orientation for the trip. Every person will carry group equipment. It has to fit on our backs or it doesn't come. And just because you're willing to carry a copy of Twilight or whatever the current book is of the day, just because you're willing to carry a Walkman or whatever, doesn't mean that it gets to come. Because if you sprain your ankle, everybody takes your backpack, and it's one for you, one for you, one for you, one for you, and it all gets passed out. Well, if you're carrying something you shouldn't have, somebody else has to carry that. Because you know what? We even pack out our own garbage. It's not just a matter of we're going to throw it away on the trail. No, we'll carry it. We'll carry it, and someone else will thank you for that. So you only carry will cause the entire group to come to a screeching halt because you will be sitting on a log over a hole for at least 3 days. And that's even though we do carry drugs that would combat it as soon as you come down with the symptoms. The group accommodates the slowest and the weakest. We never split up. I did have one group that talked me into splitting up, and the first thing that happened was somebody fell down, gashed their leg wide open, and the first aid kit was in the group that went forward and ahead. So the first thing after we stopped the bleeding was to send someone along without a pack so they could catch up to the group that had packs so that they could come back and bring the first aid kit with them and we could strip them back together again. So we will go as fast as or as slow as the group needs to go. Being tired never excuses you from a group task. Group tasks are the first thing that happen when you break camp. Group tasks may be setting up someone else's tent because you're in the tent setting up group. Why are you in a tent setting up group? Why are you setting up a tent for someone else? Because someone else has been assigned to go find water and replenish the water that we all drank while we were on the trail that day. Why are they doing that? Well, because somebody else has been sent off to get firewood in a wet enough season or national park that allows us to have fires. So if you're sick, I mean, you do get to be sick. We're not weird. We're not going to tell you, oh, you got to do it whether until you drop. No, but if you're sick, you got to say, I cannot do this. Please have somebody else fill in and do it. And sick wasn't that an uncommon thing to happen because after all, you're exhausting people beyond a point where they've probably ever been exhausted. Even the kids on the cross-country track team would come on these trips and say, you've got to be kidding. This is impossible. They just weren't used to trying to carry heavy loads up near vertical faces while breathing air at 10,000 feet. Always travel with a buddy, including and especially if you're going to the bathroom. That time when you really, really, really want privacy is a really good time to manage to make it impossible for you to know which direction everybody else was in before you did what you needed to do. So you bring somebody with you. And by the way, you're probably not the only person in the world who thinks that going to the bathroom is a good idea now and then. And so as to not bump into someone else who has the same idea as you, having anybody who can turn their back and at a respectful distance and yet stay in sight is a really important thing. These were rules common to all of us. They were, for lack of a better illustration, our 10 Commandments. They were the rules that everybody went by. Two types of campers can wreck a trip. There are the whiners, and there are the heroes. You'd think a trip full of heroes would be a wonderful thing. Navy SEALs, oh, wow, let's go. But no, it doesn't work out that way. The whiners and the heroes will take the whole group down. Now, a whiner is not someone who says, I'm cold, when it's cold. If it's cold, and you don't think it's cold, there's something wrong with you. So I'm not dealing with, I'm cold when it's cold, and I'm not dealing with people who say I'm tired when they're carrying 50 pounds at 10,000 feet. Again, if you're not tired carrying 50 pounds at 10,000 feet, you've got something wrong with you. So what is a whiner? A whiner is somebody who says, why do I have to drink the filtered water? The animals drink right out of the stream. Yes, the animals drink right out of the stream. And at some point in their infancy, they got that bug. They dealt with it. They have immunities. You don't have. Drink the filtered water. Drink nothing but the filtered water. You hazard the trip for everybody else when you think you don't have to drink the filtered water. Or oatmeal gags me. I won't eat it. You know, we don't stick wedges in people's mouths and pour in the oatmeal. I did have one gal who, for 2 days, refused to eat her oatmeal. Second day, I kept it for her, and when she went down on the trail before lunch, I handed it to her in a Ziploc, and she spooned it right out. But that whining didn't help the group one bit, and it did cause the whole group to wait until she not only ate it, but kind of got it into her system so that she had some energy to move forward. Oh, my favorite. I'm not wearing a raincoat. I don't wear a raincoat at home. They would all protest. I'd make them buy rain suits before they could go on those trips. And they'd say, no, I never use it, and I won't use it when I need it. Well, you know, hypothermia doesn't care how cool you are. And after they see somebody all shaky from the cold, all of a sudden that rain suit seems like a good idea. I'd say, you know, you don't have a house you can go inside to be warm. You have your rain suit, go put it on. That's your house. All right, heroes. Heroes like to carry more. I have just a locomotive of a young man who was a great hero. He wanted nothing so much as to just, anytime anybody came to a break and said, oh, I'm just exhausted. I said, well, I'll take that from you. I'll take that from you. I'll take that from you. Right up until, well, right up until we're marching up the side of another pass, and he just goes flat down. And these people are learning. These are young people, and they're learning about their bodies. And one of the things that they learn about is that when you work past the point of exhaustion until you flop, you don't just redistribute gear back to everybody and suddenly they're fine again. When you exceed the edge of the envelope of stamina, it takes a while to rebuild. So when this guy finally went down, we didn't have to give back the extra stuff. We had to give back everything and practically drag him up the rest of the pass. Or the one who wouldn't stop to for the blister holds up the entire group. We walked one day in. We tried what we could to heal her up for 3-4 days. It was a beautiful place, but nobody's walking. We did day trips. Left her at center camp. Why? Because she's a hero. Don't need heroes. Heroes mess it up for everybody else. The best trip of all is when all the rules are followed. When everybody looks after everybody and everybody is willing to do stuff for others because others are doing stuff for others as well. This is the ingredients of a great trip. I went to this particular mountain pass persist in something around here if it's something that you appreciate. If there's something going on in the congregation that just rubs you the wrong way, put your hand up and say, you know what, we got to deal with this. Because if you just keep marching on, no matter what, the injury multiplies until it announces itself as something pretty big. And it doesn't have to be that way. Call out early that you need some help. And just because you're a teacher doesn't mean that you are the Sunday school superintendent until you die. Just because you are an accountant doesn't make you the church treasurer until you die. You might want the variety in your congregation. Speak up. Find that other avenue. This business of helping a friend get a pack on. Starting a new program in a church is always harder than carrying a program in a church. When somebody says, I want to get a choir going, volunteer. When somebody's saying, we want to start a new Bible study group, go there. When somebody says, the weeds are about to obscure the building from the street, turn up, weed. Help mostly at the beginning, and that will help the congregation. Everybody eats the food. How's that play out? Two kinds of food in this church. There is worship and fellowship. I'm speaking to those who are choosing those things. I'm aware of that. You are here worshiping, and we're going to move from here to a carry-in dinner. God bless you all. You've all made a choice absolutely consistent with this. But you can see how when you deprive yourself of either or both, you're just not part of the group anymore. And that weakens the whole. The whole is greater when we all take part of both worship and fellowship. And then there's the matter of group equipment. Why should I carry a tent? There's 4 people using that tent. Why should I have to carry that bit of gear? Well, all of us can expect to carry some weight that is not ours. That means that even though you've raised your kids, the church hasn't raised all of its kids, and it still needs Sunday school teachers. Even though you've been a leader in your business and you're retired, the church hasn't retired. The gospel doesn't turn 65. You still need to serve in leadership in order for the church to carry on. There is weight here that doesn't belong to you, and yet you can carry it on behalf of those who can't. You know, one thing that you get when you open up a backpacking trip to grades 8 through 12, you get some of these 85-pound girls. Now they're feisty. They might still carry 40 pounds, might carry 35. They might carry a greater percentage of their body weight on their back than I carry on mine, because I'm not going to carry 85 pounds on my back. But I can carry more weight than one of these kids. I just can't. And it's false to me and to everybody in the group based on what you're working with in a church. I think fair is based on what you're working with in life as well, but you will get to stewardship drives and somebody will stand up and say, okay, we've got 30 family units. If every family unit gave $2,000, we make budget. Not every family unit can do that. Some have more, some have less. You could say, well, it doesn't feel fair that I should give $6,000 and somebody should give $200. Oh yeah, pay their bills for a month on what they make. And maybe fair will recalibrate itself a little bit in your thinking. There's group equipment in a church. Carry what you can carry. Never, ever, ever keep any food in any quantity in your tent. This is not about Suzanne's kitchen. Don't do things that are dangerous for yourself, for your church. There's all sorts of perils in the world. What you choose for your church, what you choose for yourself, you bring into the congregation because you're in the congregation. How you solve problems isn't just for you to pick, because how you solve a problem in the church is something everybody gets to share. So, remember to be part of the community in all the things you do. Don't drink the unfiltered water. Not every stream is filled with living water. One of the things that the church always needs to do is be on the lookout to welcome new people into the church. You've got to recognize that we are a church of one culture and flavor. If some zealous person who loves God wants to do something that stands our culture and our tradition on its head, you welcome them as a brother or sister in Christ to go down the street, because there's a church down there where they do that. You can say, well, that's not very Christian. Well, you know what? You will not read in all four of the Gospels of a big building on the corner of 3rd and Marion made out of brick where you sit in hardwood pews. This expression of Christianity that we have here isn't in the New Testament, but it is how the Spirit has worked with us and with those who came before us to worship God in this town for this community of believers. And if you try to be all things to all people, you will fail. Paul said he was all things to all people. If you read in his letter to the Corinthians, one of the things you will find there is the Apostle Paul listing off how many times he's been stoned, beaten, imprisoned. Does this sound like a guy who gets along with everybody? If he were really the chameleon that could turn plaid at a moment's notice, he wouldn't be getting beat up. Can we value being all things to all people? Yeah, we can value it. But please recognize that we are a group with a strong congregational emphasis, and if a person comes along who thinks that the pastor makes the first decision, the last decision, and all the decisions in between, you got to realize that's not a fit. We are hopefully coming a little more out of our shells, hopefully pressing the edge of the envelope a little more in terms of worship style. But you know what? If we get a family in that doesn't feel like they've been to church, if they haven't sung in tongues, it's not a fit. And I'm not going to criticize how they find faith in God, but I'm going to say, you know, there's a place down the road where you will feel more home. And we say to ourselves in our idealism, no, can't be. Well, it needs to be a fairly homogeneous group. A group that's willing to drink pretty much from a common stream. Again, that's my daughter. That's her, mostly dead, on the right. And you can encourage, and you can pass out an extra bag of M&Ms now and then. And do what you need to do to give people the strength and the stamina to move on. But the group doesn't leave anybody behind. Nor have we here. There always needs to be found a solution that accommodates the group that is here. We're 105 members here. You're going to get tired. Those of you who are more talented are going to get tired doing more things. Until the demographics change and we fill these pews 4 times one Saturday night, those of you who believe in the mission of this congregation are going to get tired. You're going to be called up by the nominating committee and you're going to say, I've only been off council for a year. Yep, that was your recess. Back to work. Please accept that call. And when you're taking and doing the work and it chafes you, I got a blister. And when you're exhausted, I got to stop. And a congregation that's committed to itself, knowing that you don't get to the end of the journey unless you all get there together, will make the work of the group tasks doable and a blessing. Always travel with a buddy. You know, a lot of people come to a church to have friends. Life's not that peachy out there. Most of you, when times have tested you here, stay because this is where your friends are. And you're going to stick together. And your friendships are more important to you than the issue that's gnawing away at the group. Good. That's how it's supposed to be. This isn't supposed to be a room where 80 complete loners have a relationship with God. You're a family. You're a team. You're a group. It's okay to be here because your friends are here. You can adopt these rules if you want. If you live with them, I think it'll be a great trip. The best trip of all for us was when we stopped before there were injuries. When the water was clean and pure for everybody. When we all partook of the ways to be fed. When the one who was overburdened was relieved by others who could share the load. When those of us who were overburdened didn't plow on until we collapsed, but gave up a little bit of what we had so that we could carry on to others who were happy to help us carry on. A good church is about the hardest thing you'll ever pull off. Think of how much each of you loves this place and those you find here. Think of how much here or there your hearts have been torn by an issue, by some infighting, by some complaint. And then all you got to do is say, wait a minute, we're good people. If we're tearing at each other when we're good people, then that must mean that making it work in this place is about as hard a thing as I know how to do. It's as hard as having a family love each other. And we all know how hard that can be at times. But if we do it together, we can have the best experience of our life. This can be the cradle-to-grave place that will always take care of us, always take care of each other. Jesus didn't indicate that going out into the world was a cakewalk. The world teaches us to win. The world teaches us to triumph, to overcome, to be the master of others, to have more even if it means others have less. Jesus said, you're going out like sheep into the midst of wolves. Be smart. And be innocent.